Welcome back to Yoda King channel. In today's video I'm going to be replacing my Bilstein 5100 with the King off-road racing shocks. These are for the 2005 and up. These are 2.5 front coilovers. Now, tools required, guys, is going to be floor jack, jack stands, metric wrench socket set, standard wrench socket set, 3/16 Allen wrench, and a coil wrench to adjust the ride height, which comes with this package. Also, parts list, 2 front coilovers, 2 reservoir brackets, and 1 hardware kit. Now, I did purchase the 650-pound springs because I do have an aftermarket bumper. So without further ado, let's get to it. Now, to all my viewers, it's always CYA. Make sure you got your emergency brake on, your chocolate wheels, you got your jack stands, because there's no job too important that you can't do it safe. First things first, I'm going to remove the skid plate for easier access to sway bar mounts. So I'm going to remove the 4 skid plate bolts using a 12mm socket and remove skid plate. Now I'm going to disconnect my sway bar link by removing the nut using a 17mm socket, but if the sway bar link stud is spinning, you may need to hold the stud with a 6mm Allen wrench. It's like right in the center of that stud, and use a 17mm opening wrench. Once I have my truck suspended on the jack stands, I'm going to take my floor jack and put it right beneath that lower control arm and crank it up a little bit and take some pressure off the strut. Now I'm going to remove the lower mounting bolt using a 19mm socket. Next, I'm going to remove the 3 upper mounting nuts using a 14mm speed wrench. Next, with the 19mm socket, I'm going to remove both bolts from the front lower ball joint attachment. Next, I'm going to remove the sway bar mounting bolts at the frame using a 14mm socket. I'm going to do one side at a time. Next, I'm going to loosen both front and rear the bolts to the lower control arm. I'm going to use a 22mm socket. Now it's time to let the floor jack take a bow and gently lower the curtain for the shock to make its grand exit. It's been a long time with the Bilstein 5100, but got to move on to bigger and better things. Now here we go. Now, I've been waiting to buy these for years. I've always wanted a pair of King shocks just because of the reputation. One thing I learned with these shocks is that 2.5 mid-travel doesn't mean that you're going to get a 2.5-inch ride height. 2.5 mid-travel designation for King shocks typically refers to the shock's diameter, which is 2.5 inches. The mid-travel part suggests that these shocks are designed for moderate suspension travel, indicating they are suitable for applications where a balance between off-road performance and on-road comfort is desired. Now I'm going to install the 3/8 by 1 inch mounting bolts with heavy-duty washers through the upper shock mount into the upper mounting plate on shock. I'm not going to fully tighten this yet. Now, if you guys have been following my channel for a while and you've seen all my install videos, you would know that I love to put a dab of this blue Loctite. Even if you don't see it in this video, every bolt I install, I put some of this Loctite. I'll leave a link in the description below. I'm going to torque this at 61 pounds. Next, I'm going to tighten the upper mounting bolt and torque them at 35 foot-pounds. Now, adding a dab of that blue Loctite, I'm going to install the 2 bolts to the front lower ball joint attachment, and I'm going to torque these at 118 foot-pounds. Now it's time for me to install my reservoir brackets, but if you're like me and have purchased a C4 hybrid bumper with reinforcement plates, you're going to run into an issue. The bolt for your bracket is going to be in the way of the install, so here I'm going to notch out a piece of my reservoir bracket in order to fit right. All you need is a Sharpie, some kind of circular saw, whether it's a Dremel or a grinder. And you just want to make sure that the bottom holes for this bracket align with those of the truck body. You know it, guys, safety first. I'm going to use a face shield while using an angle grinder. I did have a near miss a year back where this circular saw broke and shot off and cut through my ceiling, so I don't want that to ever happen again. Looking back in hindsight, I wish I would have used a Dremel with a smaller circular saw so I wouldn't have to have notched this whole thing completely out, because now it's going to be a little flimsy. But I got a little desperate and I didn't really want to run to the store and buy more tools, so this sufficed. Next step, I'm going to slide the base of the reservoir bracket between the sway bar and the frame using the provided bolts to mount the reservoir bracket to the existing holes in the frame. I'm going to tighten these bolts at 30 foot-pounds using a 5/16 Allen wrench. Next step, I'm going to install the sway bar to the threaded holes in the reservoir bracket using the 3/8 inch and 3/4 inch bolts and washers provided in the kit. The factory sway bar brackets are side specific and stamped L and R with an arrow that points toward the front of the vehicle. And I'm also going to torque these at 30 foot-pounds. I'm going to drill a hole right here because this is flimsy. Without this piece, you could actually bend it. It's hard aluminum. Because I cut out a notch right here, it makes it that much flimsy. You could actually bend this here. So I don't want any issues while I'm riding out. I'm going to do a pilot hole right here, and I'm going to put a self-tapping screw in there to hold this in place. So I'm going to do it a small bit, and I'm going to do it with a bit that's closer to this right here. This is a 3/4 inch. You can use whatever you have. The bigger, the better. In the frame, there's a hole like right behind here. I don't want that. Now, if you've handed your shocks to the pros for that VIP treatment, go ahead, slap on your reservoir shocks, button it up. You're practically done. You can throw on your skid plate if you're feeling fancy, but personally, I'll let mine hang loose. It shaves off minutes from your alignment bill, and you know, time is money and I'm on a budget. But if you're like me, a certified rebel with a cause, the cause being proving pros wrong because they say it can't be done, leave that reservoir hanging low, brother. I'm about to teach you how to set your own ride height so you'll never have to beg the pros for a favor again. Before making this video, I was told by King Reps I couldn't adjust these shocks while on the truck. False. I achieved it. My compadres, the underdogs are the real rulers here on this channel. Let the rebellion commence. The first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that your front suspension is off the ground. You want to relieve all the pressure on the shocks as much as you can. First thing I'm going to do with an 18mm open end wrench, loosen the coupling just enough where it's still snug and I can push up the hose out of the way in order to stick the collar wrench onto the collar to start my compression. The objective here is not only to get the hose out of the way, but to make sure that there's no oil leaks because this is high pressure fluid in these reservoirs. Once the hose is out of the way, make sure you tighten the coupling to hold that pressure while you're compressing the shock. Next, I'm going to use my 3/16 Allen wrench and I'm going to loosen the pinch bolt one turn counterclockwise, making sure not to loosen more than one turn. Next, I'm going to spray some lube on the threads just to make it easier when I'm compressing. My advice to you guys, which I don't show it here in this video, go ahead and raise that collar all the way to the top and then start to compress so you can count your turns. For every 5 turns equals 1 inch of lift, 2.5 turns equals 1/2 inch lift. To achieve the 2.5 inch lift, I did 12.5 turns on the passenger side, but because Tacomas tend to favor the driver's side due to the gas tank, battery, and other heavy components that are on that side of the vehicle. I went up an extra turn of the driver's side, going to 13.5 turns. This is what we call Tacoma lean. Now this worked for me, but you might need to adjust yours depending on what you have versus what I have. This is why I decided to learn how to do this on my own, because if not, you would have to take it off, have them compress it again, or if the pros are doing the installation and charge by the hour, now it can get spendy. I'm happy with my ride height. Now I'm going to retighten the adjuster nut pinch bolt. Now I'm going to go ahead and put that hose back into its correct position and retighten it. And last, I'm going to install my reservoir onto its bracket. Time. Now to all my viewers, I just want to say hard work pays off, and now it's time to hit the off-road with confidence. Huge thanks to all my subscribed members for the support throughout this mod journey. Your encouragement keeps the wheels turning. Stay tuned for some adventures ahead. Peace.